vitality, what are we talking about? We're talking about not just longevity, but quality of life, right? Because most people don't care about living to 100 if it's mostly spent in the hospital. You want to be, able to do all the things that you love and continue to enjoy, no matter the age. So that's really what we're talking about. Somebody earlier said Ponce de Leon and the Fountain of Youth, and I like that because really this medicine, lifestyle medicine, if you will, is the closest thing we have to the Fountain of Youth. Everybody wants a magic pill or shot or potion, but at this time, your best bet is still through lifestyle modification. So there's a great deal within our control to favorably influence our quality of life and longevity. And I'm going to go over those biggest points, the stuff that really matters, that makes the biggest difference in your overall health. And if I had to choose just one to focus on, it would be nutrition every time. It's not as exciting maybe as some other things, but nutrition is where it counts, because your body can only work with what you give it. There's a saying in computer programming, garbage in, garbage out. And the same thing applies to our bodies. So the quality and types of food, the amounts, the frequency, these things absolutely matter to your health. Because if you're putting low quality stuff in, your body just can't perform at its best. And optimal living is what we're after. The standards that are set forth by the government are for minimum health, just to keep you breathing and upright. But that's not what we're after. We want optimal vitality. And that means being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it without limitation. For most of us, that limitation is pain or disease of some sort. And the good news is the biggest killers, the things that get about 90% of Americans, namely heart disease and diabetes, can be prevented and treated very successfully with lifestyle modification, mainly nutrition. So there's a lot within your control, and that's a beautiful thing. So you don't have to feel like you're helpless against aging, because you're not. You can really make a big difference, and sometimes in a short period of time. So if we're going to define aging, how would we say that? I know it's a simple term, right? But what does that really mean to get older, to age? So the human body is only in two states throughout its lifetime. It's either growing or slowly dying. There's really no maintenance. And that growth is dependent upon replication of all the cells in our body. Every tissue and every cell that comprises it is replaced on a regular basis. And within about a year, your body is almost completely replaced, rejuvenated. That copying process, that rejuvenation, is completely dependent upon your food. So that's why it's so very important that you have the quality foods in the right amounts. Your body can only use what you feed it to create that replication process. It happens naturally as we grow from birth up to 18 to 25. Somewhere in there is where most of us kind of peak in terms of growth. And then by age 30, we start to see a very slight, very gradual decline, right? You're not the same at 30 as you were at 15. And what's going on there? Well, that copying of all the cells and of all the tissue is not as perfect after, say, age 30 as it was at 15 or 5. So if you're going to use a copying machine and you've got an intricate drawing that you're going to make a perfect copy of, you do that one time and it's probably going to copy very well. It's going to come out looking the same as the original. Copy it again, you go through this hundreds, thousands, millions of times, and little changes start taking place. You notice that by the 1000th printing, it may not look that different from the original, but there's some differences, some changes. That's what aging is. So that cellular replication, that copying of the tissue that does not occur with the same degree of precision that it did when you were younger. And eventually, after millions of those replications and advanced aging at this point, let's say 75, 85, 95, the copy no longer resembles the original. And so things don't work that way. Things start to break because it's been copied so many times. And so what we want to do is provide the body with the best material possible to make the highest quality copy possible over and over and over. Because if you're not giving the body what it needs to replicate accurately, there will be changes, and they're usually not to your benefit. And if we wanted to define, if we want to take this to the extreme and define natural death, come on down. Are you Carolyn?
Yes.
Hey, nice to meet you. When you hear that someone dies naturally, what does that mean, right? We don't think about it much. I think all of us would prefer to go that way, like in your sleep, right? Peacefully. But why? Why did a person stop living? Well, that replication's going on. It's going on of all these tissues, and generally what goes first is something to do with the cardiovascular system, the heart, or the blood vessels that are supplying blood to these different tissues. And natural death usually, especially if it's while you're asleep, that usually means that one of the major blood vessels, like the aorta, that pumps the largest amount of blood through the body, has weakened. That copy is not the same as it was originally, and it doesn't have the structural integrity of that blood vessel, so it tears a little bit, kind of like a hole in a pipe, if you will, or a hose might be more accurate. And so the blood is no longer contained here. It spills out into the body cavity. I'm sorry if I'm being too graphic here, but in case you wondered what natural death means, this is generally what happens. And that blood pools in the body to the extent that you don't have sufficient circulation and oxygen going to all of these different tissues in the body, especially the brain, and you gradually hit that degree of hypoxia, which means insufficient oxygen, and cells die. Cells have to have the oxygen to live. So that's a rather peaceful way to go. You could have the same effect with an injury, like in a car accident or what have you. If it were to sever one of those major arteries, you would bleed out, but in a much more pronounced or dramatic fashion. Most of us would prefer to experience that while we're asleep and just go quietly. So that's what aging really means. It's the body's inability to copy tissues and cells so that it no longer has the same integrity and function that it did when you were younger. We want to delay that, right? And we want to keep the quality as high as possible, because the higher the quality of those tissues, the better they're going to perform. So when you talk about, say, arthritis, what is that? That's a degradation of tissue, specifically joint tissue. So the joints are no longer as strong and as sturdy as they once were. They don't have the same polished shape, so they don't fit as smoothly as they did. And as a result of that, they don't work as well, and they tend to irritate the surrounding nerves, causing pain. So when somebody says, hey, I'm 60 years old, I've got arthritic knees, that's because those tissues have not replicated in the same fashion they did when you were 18, and the integrity's not there, and it hurts. So in an example like that, what can you do? Well, you've got to give the body what it needs to accurately copy and repair that tissue so that it now resembles what you had when you were younger. And we can discuss that in terms of specifics with nutrition and supplements, and exercise is very important with arthritis. Although it's usually the furthest thing from an arthritis patient's mind, because they say, hey, I just told you I'm in pain. What are you doing making me move? That's what I don't want to do. But it's exactly what you do need to stimulate that growth, that rejuvenation of the joints. So that's what aging is about in a nutshell. And nutrition is the most important element to consider when you're trying to delay or prevent that, or even reverse it. There is that capability within the human body, depending on how far along you are and the condition of the body. But the human body is amazing. It can rejuvenate. We are the only machine, if you will, that gets stronger with use. And by that, let's compare it to your car. If you drove your car a little bit harder every day, eventually something's going to break. You know, something, right? If you're just pushing it, you can expect something to break. But the human body, if you gradually work it harder and harder with exercise, and you give it the right material to rebuild, it'll be stronger than it was before. That's the whole point of exercise, right? That you get stronger than you were before. That's incredible. Man has not made a machine that will do that yet. So you have an incredible resource within your own body, and it makes sense to make use of it and to do what you can, because it's an incredible gift and it's the only one you got. That car breaks down, worst case, you can get a new one, but the body, maybe not. So does that ring true with everybody, what I've said thus far about aging and how we would actually define it? Questions thus far? Comments? Want to know why I'm bald? Or yeah, you probably don't want to listen to me about hair loss. I don't know. But in my defense, I've always had bad hair, so pretty early on I just said,
that is a good question. Is there anything that can grow hair that's getting thinner?
yeah, that's a very legitimate question, and it's a $1 billion one. The hair restoration industry is huge. And to make a long story short, there's no miracle out there, but there has been progress made. There are therapies, injection therapies, such as platelet-rich prolotherapy, or PRP. These are very small scalp injections that help to regenerate the follicle. And they do work. To what extent is variable. I've seen good results and I've seen none. Yeah. But there is more available now than there was in the past. But hair is big. People are really into their hair, which has always kind of confused me. But yeah, if you find something, let me know and I'll put my name behind it. So yeah, there are some things available in aesthetics, right, Carolyn? She knows more about this than I do, I'm sure. So there are treatments out there that are legitimate. Yeah. You have nice hair.
Thank you. Well,
oh, this guy. Okay.
I hear that's in now.
Yeah. I can fix it in a heartbeat. Just get a ball cap. Keep that on. There you go. Look at that. Good question. Yeah. So hair is another one of those aspects of aging. So the replication of those follicles fails over time, and it manifests with a receding hairline or fewer follicles up front, and then eventually the follicles don't work at all and you're bald. So that is a result of aging. Very genetic though. I mean, we all know people that, you know, up to their deathbed have, you know, beautiful thick hair, and other people that don't from an early age. So it's really genetic as to how many of those follicles you possess, which is determined at birth. Which brings up another good point. Fat cells and muscle cells, those are determined at birth as well. Okay, so when somebody says, ooh, you know, genetically I'm fat, I have more fat than other people, there's truth to that. There are some people that carry a lot more fat cells, but the trick is those fat cells can shrink or expand according to your diet. You know, if you're eating too much, those fat cells are going to store that energy and they're going to get bigger. Unfortunately, fat cells also have the ability to fully replicate. They can split and make a new one. If there's not enough room left in that fat cell to store that energy, it will genetically reproduce, which isn't great. Muscle is not like that. The number of muscle cells and fibers that you will have your entire life is determined at birth or before. But they can grow to an amazing extent. The term is hypertrophy, and that means enlargement of those fibers. So that's why your muscles get bigger when you're working out. They respond to that stress by getting bigger, but they cannot replicate. What you got is what you got, and that's why some folks are more suited for some exercise or labor than others. Like myself, I'm never going to be as big and strong as a Samoan, right? They were born with a lot more muscle than I'll ever have. You can greatly improve upon yours, but there are some genetic limits. But maintaining what you have is really what matters over time. And let me say this, the most important tissue in the body in terms of aging, okay, is muscle, period. You'll want to maximize how much muscle you're carrying. There is so much data correlating muscle and disease, or inverse, meaning the less muscle you have, the more likely you are to suffer from a number of diseases. Muscle is the most metabolically active tissue in the body. That means it requires the most energy and it has the most impact upon the metabolism. So if somebody says, hey, I eat like a bird and I gain weight, you've probably heard these things before, and generally that's a result of low muscle mass. As you increase your muscle, the energy needs go up dramatically and you can eat more. It's a beautiful thing. But more importantly, that muscle is the biggest factor behind aging. So you'll want to maintain it. You want to keep that muscle and hold on to it dearly, because it does correlate with longevity and certainly with quality of life. So many injuries that can prove fatal, like fall injuries that'll break a hip. How many times have you heard of someone breaking a hip and then they go downhill pretty quick after that, right? And within a year they may be passed. So much of that can be prevented if you have adequate muscle to stabilize the joints so that you don't have as many fall injuries, for instance. There's only two tissues in the body that we can consciously control, meaning no matter how hard you wish and hope that your liver would get stronger or smaller or whatever, you can't do that. The only two tissues you can control are fat and muscle. You can gain or lose either, and they are completely within your control. So it makes sense to maximize muscle and minimize fat. Body fat is correlated with disease as well, in the opposite fashion, meaning the more you have, the more prone you are to the common killers, especially diabetes. So you want to keep your body fat levels down and keep your muscle up. Nutrition is key to that. You must also have the stimulus from exercise. You can eat perfectly, you can have a just absolutely spot-on diet, but you will not grow muscle unless you work out. And that's because muscle is very metabolically active. It requires a lot of energy, and the human body does not want to add muscle without reason. So it's a matter of fuel efficiency. Your body says, hey, it's going to cost a lot of calories to build that pound of muscle. I'm not going to do it unless you make me. You have to give me a reason, and that reason is exercise. You have to do more than you're doing now for the body to say, okay, I got no choice. I have to add some muscle to complete these activities that are assigned. So it's a survival thing. And just as a side point, that's why it's silly to see images on movies or whatever of cavemen as like bodybuilders. We got this image that they were packed with muscle. No way. Muscle is very inefficient and it requires a lot of food. So if you're in a survival situation, you don't know where your next meal's coming from, you don't want to have exceptional amounts of muscle unless you really, really need it, because it's going to take a lot of fuel to support it. So that's always been humorous to me. If you look at, say, an Aborigine, you know, somebody who's still in that native environment, are they 250 pounds of muscle? No way. Their body has learned, okay, I need just this much muscle to survive, and that's what we're going to carry. But we can alter that artificially with exercise. We can increase that demand so that the body has no choice. And as we said originally, with the machine getting stronger with use, that's where the human body shines. No other machine does that. If you give the body the opportunity, it will reward you, and it'll put on some nice lean muscle, which is going to have the biggest impact on your longevity and quality of life. Muscle is everything. So exercise is critical, and it's not just for the gym rat. It's for everybody. If you're over 40, 50, 60, you've got to make it a part of your life. Our bodies are designed to be used. We're not designed to be sedentary, completely stationary, and so you got to make use of it. And by hitting the gym 30 minutes or an hour a day, whatever, that's really not exercise. If you think about it, our bodies are designed to move all day, so that's kind of a bare minimum. And you can see that with guys who have labor-intensive work, like a farmer, rancher, wherever. That's not exercise, that's work, right? That's their life, and that keeps them alive longer because they're using the body, and that's what we need to do. This is all just a carrier for our soul, you know, and we should make use of it. Exercise is good. Resistance exercise is critical. I mean, weight training, okay, for that muscle mass. You give the body a reason through resistance training to hold on to that muscle as you get older, and it will have a big impact on your overall health and longevity. Cardiovascular exercise, like the treadmill or bike or whatever, equally important for the heart. You want to keep the heart strong. It's a muscle. But frankly, it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy to do. You know, you get your heart rate up for an extended period, at least 20 minutes daily is great, and you're in good shape. The heart will maintain that strength. Our cardiovascular capacity as we age is excellent. There's folks, advanced ages, that run marathons. You know, that's incredible. So you can not only achieve those, but more importantly, maintain a very healthy level of heart health without a whole lot of effort. It's not that bad. Brisk walk or the bike, you don't have to climb mountains. So that's a pretty easy thing to integrate into your daily plan. You've probably heard of the 10,000 steps stuff, like people with their watches and whatnot. I really like that. That's an excellent foundation or base level of exercise. 10,000 might be a bit much. That's what does that equate to? You know, John? How many miles is that with average stride?
5 miles. 5 miles.
5? Yeah, that's quite a bit, right? For walking every day. If you have the time and your joints
5
are...
miles a day, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. But even if you get only half of that, you can maintain your heart health. So it's not that hard, and you don't have to do anything crazy. You're not cross-country skiing or whatever. But the resistance training is really key. You want to definitely include that a couple times a week at minimum to hold on to that muscle. It's your treasure. You want to very actively preserve that. Questions? Feel free to contradict me on anything. Yeah, I don't know everything. I wish I did.
Not a contradiction, just,
Yeah.
you know, like most of us grew up on like the food pyramid, you want to talk about that for a
Oh.
minute? So people are actually eating what they should be.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, got some allergies going on. You guys have any of that?
Oh,
Yeah, you feel young?
Every spring.
Yeah? What's the big offender? Is it a tree?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
Juniper
Yeah.
trees and
Yeah.
piñons.
Yeah. Palo Verde trees, have you seen those? Down in the valley? That's where I'm from. A beautiful tree, that green bark and the yellow flowers. I love to look at them, but boy, when they start blooming, here it comes. Okay, so you want to talk about nutrition a little bit more, is that okay? A lot of folks don't find it the most exciting topic, but once you realize the benefits, you'll probably change your mind and be a lot more interested. You don't have to have an advanced degree in nutrition, though. You can very easily summarize the key points with the human diet that will maximize your lifespan and quality of life. You can summarize those pretty briefly without, spending a ton of time researching, or certainly don't need any fad approaches. She mentioned the food pyramid, which has just been awful. The government instituted that, I don't know, 60s something. Why I don't want to go there as to why they did that, but it's bad. It puts a big emphasis on carbohydrate, sugar. Sugar is carbohydrate and vice versa. And very little emphasis on proteins, and quality fats aren't even mentioned. So it's kind of a recipe for weight gain. It's probably responsible for some of the trends we're seeing today. And those trends are not good. They're obesity, which has climbed tremendously in the last 20, 30 years, which is so fast. The human body has not changed in 20, 30 years. We are the same genetically. So the difference that's causing such rapid negative change is dietary. And if we want to further isolate that and be specific as to what portion of the diet is responsible, it's carbohydrates, sugars. So human nutrition is three things: carbohydrates, which are sugars. You need those for activities, moving. It's the body's fuel source. It's like gasoline. Proteins, which are mainly your meats and eggs. These are sources of the amino acids needed for all of that cellular replication that I discussed earlier. That's all dependent upon protein, quality protein. So not all proteins are the same. And then lastly, fats. Fats get a bad rap. Fats are very caloric, meaning a little bit goes a long way, so it's easy to overeat on them. But just like proteins, not all fats are the same. Some fats are essential, meaning we can't make them in our body and we'll die without them. So that's pretty important. And they're used for all of your hormone production. So over time, especially as we age, that hormone production tends to dwindle, and you need those fats to maintain it, to keep those healthy levels of the hormones. Whether it's testosterone for the male, estrogen for the woman, they're all dependent upon those healthy fats. And then you've got the not so healthy fats that people overeat on. So that the food pyramid is almost completely wrong. It should really emphasize proteins and fats and carbohydrates lastly. There's a lot of, and always have been a lot of fad diets and approaches out there. You guys have probably heard of everything like the keto diet and Atkins, right? That was the big one for a long time, carnivore. So these approaches are all doing the same thing, which is to reduce carbohydrate. So when you cut carbs out of the diet, you'll probably lose weight for two reasons. The first, that's rarely mentioned, is that it takes 4 grams of water to store 1 gram of carbohydrate in the body. 4 to 1. It takes a lot of water. So when you dramatically reduce your carbohydrates, the body then has to dramatically expel water that's no longer needed because you're not storing them anymore. 4 to 1. And so when you hear, oh, I lost a lot of water weight, it's true. If you cut your carbs way back, you're going to spend some time in the restroom, and that's where most of your weight loss occurs initially. So that's a big factor.
Question.
Yeah.
Question. Diabetics are noted for having extreme thirst. Is that part of the
It is. You're right. So he's referring to a type 1 diabetic, a true diabetic. These people are much less common than the diabetics we're hearing about today, which are type 2, and they're really almost opposite. So a type 1 diabetic cannot produce insulin. Insulin is secreted by the pancreas, and it's the most powerful hormone in the body. You want to make note of that. Insulin can make a huge difference in your health and longevity, and those poor souls who are type 1 cannot produce insulin, and prior to the manufacture of insulin pharmaceutically, that was a death sentence. Most type 1 diabetics did not reach adulthood. So here's how it works. The human body absolutely requires insulin to make use of carbohydrate. There's a ratio. So when carbs come in, the body cannot get that sugar where it needs to go into the cells to keep us alive without insulin. Insulin's like a gatekeeper. So you have to have insulin to open the door to the cell to let the carbs in. And without it, they don't get in and you die. So yes, they are very thirsty frequently. That's a first symptom of diabetes. The body is furiously trying to conserve as much sugar as it can. It's a 4-to-1 ratio of water to sugar. And so a diabetic will be crazy thirsty. Their body says more water because it can't get the insulin it needs to let the sugar in the cell. So it tries to bind that sugar freely floating in the bloodstream, which is a very bad thing. You don't want sugar floating around in the bloodstream. Causes high blood sugar, and that will eventually kill you. So type 1 diabetes, very serious. Man, I would hate to be burdened with it, you know. Today's technology has improved their quality of life tremendously because they have automatic insulin pumps, which are awesome. But up to this recent point, they had to check their blood sugar and administer insulin before each meal. Or they could die. They'd go into a coma and die. Can you imagine living like that? It's just awful. So I really feel for them, especially kids. That's too much to ask of a kid. I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, but thankfully, type 1 diabetes cannot be caught. You can't develop into that. It's a genetic thing. It's predetermined at birth. Type 2 diabetes, very, very different animal. So type 1 doesn't make insulin, right? And type 2 is making too much because for the same reasons, the body is now getting too much sugar coming in, they're eating too much carbohydrate, so the pancreas says, hey, we need more insulin to use up all this extra sugar, and the cell becomes resistant to that insulin. It's like a rusty key. So you use that key over and over and over, and it eventually just doesn't work as well, and it requires more insulin in order to get that gate open. And that's why the term insulin resistance was developed. So the good news about type 2, which is not assigned at birth, it's completely a result of lifestyle. The great news is that it can be completely turned around. You can be cured, and within a short period of time. So by making dietary changes, and exercise is a factor, you can get a type 2 diabetic off of all medications within 90 days. That's amazing. You know, if you go to the doc with almost any other affliction, you don't have that kind of prognosis. I have personally treated type 2 diabetics who within 30 days, 1 month, were able to get off all meds and have their blood sugars under control. So that's the good news. If you had to pick something, type 2 is a better option than a lot of diseases out there. Easily preventable. It all comes down to sugar. That's what it is. So if you take in too much sugar, the body is not designed well for that, and you will eventually have trouble. In terms of health and early death, the most dangerous form of that are your skinny diabetics. You may have seen that contradiction. You know, we associate type 2, especially with being overweight. Makes sense, you're taking in too much sugar, but the guys you really worry about are the ones that are actually thin, because that means that their insulin production is very messed up. And sometimes their pancreas essentially dies, becomes overly exhausted, and they've now become dependent upon insulin like a type 1. That's not good. So, easily managed though. So when we talk about carbohydrate with all these different diets, Atkins, keto, whatever, those are extremes. They say, hey, carbs are the problem, get rid of them, no carbs. Not a good way to go for a couple of reasons. Has anybody ever done a diet like that? Have you ever been around anybody who's done a diet like that? Because that'll lead me to my next point. It makes you angry. If you go without sugar for any length of time, you get hungry. And your body starts giving you signs. It says, hey, we need some sugar. And it'll make you hungry. It'll make you grumpy. You get tired. It's just all bad. And that's because we are designed to utilize sugars. That's what fuels us. The devil is in the quantity. You need the right amount to fuel your activities, but you don't want an excess, which can be converted to fat and develop into diabetes. But you don't have to eliminate it. Extremes like that aren't good because they're not maintainable. How are you going to do that the rest of your life, right? That's pretty tough. For every meal, you're going to say no carbohydrate whatsoever. That means no bread, no sauces, not even vegetables. Any diet that says vegetables must be omitted, that's a red flag. So, why do those diets exist? Why are they so popular? They made lots of money. Because in the short term they work. You'll lose weight the fastest by not eating any carbohydrate. And the keto diet is named such because when the body is starved of carbohydrate, it enters a metabolic state known as ketosis. And the supporters of these keto type diets like Atkins and carnivore, they say this is desirable. Yeah, you want to be in ketosis. That means that you're burning fats for fuel. It sounds really good on paper. Ketosis is a disease state. The body does that to survive during periods of starvation. This is not desirable. You don't want to run like this forever. It's inefficient metabolically. It takes a ton of protein to convert into ketones to be used as fuel. It's not good. It's a last resort for the human body. It says, hey, we're dying, so let's convert this into that to get us by. Lots of metabolic waste accumulates, so it can be very hard on the kidneys especially. Ammonia is the breakdown product of catabolism. Catabolism means to break down or destroy, and the body has to break down all of its stored sugar and a lot of stored protein, namely muscle, to convert into sugar. It's just a very inefficient way of going about it. You can eliminate all that, you feel a heck of a lot better, and probably maintain your relationships better by including the right amount of carbohydrate. What is that right amount? It varies according to your activity levels, but you can safely say that most people, unless they're bricklayers or grave diggers, do not need more than 200 grams of carbohydrate a day. That's a very safe amount. So I like to start folks there with 200 total grams of carbohydrate a day and see what happens. And by what happens, I mean how you feel and what's the scale say. If you want to lose weight, are you losing weight? And if you are and you feel decent, let's keep it there. There's no need to further restrict. But if you have somebody who's really sedentary and they just don't need 200 grams, you may have to pull back a little bit further, but you never have to eliminate it. That's not sustainable. So those approaches are generally not the way to go unless it's an emergency type situation, like if you have somebody who's horribly diabetic and they're going to die unless they get some body fat off quick, then I might clinically utilize a keto style diet for a period of time, but it's not the end goal.
Well, that reminds me of the fad diet and everything, and catabolizing your body cells and things, your muscle. What do you think of the, intermittent fasting, things like that? That seems to be really popular right now.
Yeah, it is. So fasting is a big topic because for some reason it's been associated with spirituality and some religions too, which is kind of odd. But I'm not going to go there. I might be standing in the pulpit, but yeah. So fasting can be a heated topic with some people, but I'm going to break it down and give it to you physiologically what that means. And intermittent fasting is just fasting for a shorter period of time. Fasting means not eating, period. Intermittent means you say, hey, I'm not going to eat for X number of hours daily, like 18 out of 24 hours I don't eat. That's intermittent fasting. So the longer you go without food, specifically carbohydrate, the more sensitive your body becomes to it. This is a good thing. So when it becomes more sensitive, that means that less insulin is required to process the sugar. This is the opposite of diabetes. So intermittent fasting works really well for preventing and treating diabetes. You're essentially limiting how much you can eat daily. So it's another way of looking at it. It's just the same end result, right? So if I give you a diet that says you're going to eat 3 meals a day, but it's restricted calories, it's going to be the same as if I give you the same number of calories squeezed into a smaller amount of time. So if a person's hunger levels are not severe, so they say, hey, yeah, I can easily go without breakfast, I'm not hungry till noon, hey, intermittent fasting could work for you. And that longer period between dinner and lunch the next day really gives the body a chance to become more sensitive to those sugars when you put them in. So it can be effective. I like to use it as a increased practicality measure, meaning diets and nutrition is only as effective as it is practical. So I can write out a perfect diet that will be of absolutely no use because it's not practical. The person says, what is this? You know, I've never heard of these foods. You want me eating 6 times a day, all this, you know, pure organic stuff. I don't even know how to pronounce it. So that's an example of an impractical diet that's worthless. Practicality is everything because you want to be able to sustain it. You want to make it a lifestyle change rather than a temporary diet. And intermittent fasting can fit the bill. It really frees up a lot of decision making. You're eating less frequently. So for a lot of folks, it works really well. And it is sustainable. So yeah, it can be a good approach. If a guy wants to maximize his lean muscle, usually a younger guy, but you never know, intermittent fasting is not the way to go because to build muscle, you need a steady stream of protein throughout the day to feed that new muscle. And when you limit your meals, you know, to 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, whatever, there's a big window there where the body doesn't have that protein coming in, so it's pretty inefficient. You can do it. Human body is incredibly adaptive, so don't believe it when somebody says, oh, you have to do this, or you must do that, or it won't work. We're here for a reason because we've survived, you know, millennia through some really harsh conditions. So if the body needs to grow muscle, if it feels like there's a big demand, it'll find a way. So don't let that necessarily limit you, but it is more efficient. It's easier, if you will, to eat a normal diet if you're trying to really gain muscle. So if I'm working with a younger guy, let's say a kid playing football, you know, in high school, I would never say, let's do intermittent fasting. That's just not the best approach, unless he's very overweight or whatever. But yeah, it works really well for a lot of people. Have you guys experienced that at all or heard about it? Yeah? It's a big term. It just means eating less often. Yeah, and I usually start, by the way, with 12 hours because almost everybody can do a 12-hour fast. Because let's say you finish dinner at 7 p.m., you don't normally eat breakfast till 7 a.m., boom, there's your 12 hours. So, you know, unless you're in a situation where the person's grossly overeating, like late at night, but 12 hours is a safe spot. And then I increase it by a couple hours from there. What you want to avoid is hunger because it will derail you. Eventually you'll goof up. Hunger is a very powerful stimulus for survival, and You might beat it in the short term, but it'll eventually win. Because the body knows, hey, if we don't get enough food, we die. So it'll eventually, it'll make the biggest men fall. Hunger's a very effective tool.
What do you think of the vegan diet?
Yeah, good question. So it's another example of an extreme. You're eliminating an entire food group, and in this case, one of the big three nutrients. So we've got carbs, we've got proteins, we've got fats. Vegan is almost completely carb. So proteins come mainly from meats, eggs. So you're eliminating that protein, which we really need for muscle, but more importantly in terms of longevity, we need it for that cellular copying. You need that quality protein coming in order to replicate those cells as you age. So from an aging or anti-aging perspective, vegan is not a good way to go. People jump through hoops and hurdles with it to make it work. So you get those arguments. They say, oh, well, I do get the quality proteins I need because I include this supplement, or I combine my foods in this way or that way. Yeah, again, the body's very adaptive. It'll find a way to keep you alive, but why are you doing that to yourself? It's a lot easier just to include some lean, quality proteins. So you probably figured out that what I advocate is a more of a balanced approach. If you had to state what I advocate as the best diet or nutrition plan to follow, it'd be paleo. Have you heard of that? Paleo style. Again, it's another big term. All it means is lean meats and veggies. That's what most of it's composed of.
Does protein powder substitute eating meat?
Good question. Food is always best. I know that sounds contradictory when I'm standing by a bunch of protein powder, but it's the truth. So if you're going to use a protein powder, you want to get one that includes some natural sources of proteins to, be the equivalent as much as possible. So really the answer is don't rely on protein powder as your sole source of protein, but it's a very useful addition. A lot of us have trouble getting enough protein in our diet, so just one scoop of a quality protein powder goes a long way. But I would never advocate that as your only source. Besides, meat tastes too good. Why would you want to go without that, right? I'm a nerd, so I spent 90 days doing lots of blood work on myself, experimenting with a vegan diet, and I actually did ovo vegetarian, which means eggs, so pretty far from vegan. But boy, I was unimpressed with the changes I saw in my blood work. I kept my exercise the same, tried to minimize the variables, but my lipids, my triglycerides, everything was dramatic. So it certainly wasn't healthy for me. I did it. It wasn't that hard. I mean, I like meat, so there were times where I definitely wanted it, but the eggs were, they kept me somewhat satisfied. I wouldn't want to do it for longer than 90 days. But to me, that was pretty solid evidence that my body doesn't work well like that. And individuality is important. It should be obvious that no two people are exactly alike. And for that reason, we have different needs. And really what that comes down to is how your body processes different nutrients. So food in its natural, when you ingest it in that form, has to be broken down in order to be utilized by the body. That breaking down is dependent upon enzymes that are released primarily in the stomach, and individual release of those and the types of varies tremendously. So that's why you'll have one guy that says meat makes me feel sluggish and lethargic, and I don't like to have a big burger, and the other guy will say the opposite. If I don't have my meat, I'm tired, and I need that meat to feel strong. That's because of the difference in enzyme production. So you can't force a body to do what it's not naturally doing. It's going to favor one approach or the other. Yeah, you can supplement with enzymes, and the body, you'll live. The body is adaptive, but it's best to follow what is your instinctive optimal approach. How do you do that? By the time we're 5, 6 years old, most of us know what foods we like and don't like. You'll always have the kid that eats a ton of meat versus the other kid that you can't force it down him. So it's good to listen to your body and act accordingly. If it feels unnatural, if it feels bad, if you feel bad following a certain eating approach, you probably shouldn't do it. So there is no one size fits all with nutrition, which is another big problem because all of these, the weight loss industry acts as if it's true. They say everybody should do keto or everybody should do vegan or whatever. No. A lot of it's genetic. So if you look at the Indian population, for instance, they do really well on vegetarian type approaches because they've eaten in that way for thousands of years. Their systems, their bodies, their stomach and gallbladder have, I don't like to use the term evolved, but they have developed a lot of enzyme production necessary for that carbohydrate breakdown of the vegetables and not for meat because they didn't have any. And it's also a religious thing for them as well, for the Hindu faith. So they don't eat meat, and so their body doesn't produce that enzyme. If you give them a burger, they're going to feel terrible. Conversely, if you look at Northern Europeans in particular, like your Scandinavian, Norwegian, these type of folks, exact opposite. They do poorly on vegetables, and they'll tell you, they're nauseous, they feel terrible, but you can give them a 1 pound steak and they feel great. They have the enzymes for it, and that's developed over time. It's passed on mother to child, so it pays to listen to your body. But in general, I advocate a paleo approach. I did it long before they labeled it as paleo. I think that they use that term referring to the Paleolithic period, which means before a lot of cooking and industrialization and processing, blah, blah, blah. So it just means real food with minimal processing. Yeah, you cook things like normal, but you don't throw a million chemicals at them. If you see a hot dog in a can that is shelf stable for 2 years, that should scare you. There's something in there. What's going on? So you want to eat things that are as fresh as possible with a measured carbohydrate intake instead of making that the primary source of energy, like from the food pyramid. So what does a paleo approach look like on a daily basis? I'll line it out for you quick. It's meat and veggies. So breakfast usually means some eggs, whatever form you like. And if you're in need of some energy at that time, some sugar, fruit is your best option. If you can get your hands on a real bread, dark bread, which sounds funny, but it's kind of hard to find. The latest list or number of ingredients I saw for bread was 55 off the store shelf. Can you believe that? I have a chemistry background and I can't pronounce half of the stuff on there. I don't know what it's doing. But it's all about freshness, I guess, or stability on the shelf. You don't want any of that. You want to have a short list of ingredients, shorter the better. Typically, if anything has 5 or more ingredients, look elsewhere. Shorter is better. So if you can find a real bread, which will not stay fresh very long, you're going to have to buy it regularly. And it's going to taste different because what we consider bread is not really bread. But anyway, you can have some bread, some butter, some eggs, or some fruit. That's a standard breakfast. Quantities are going to be dependent upon the person's size, age, and output. Obviously you're going to need a different quantity than you will. Lunch and dinner should be very similar. Some lean meat, any type of fibrous vegetables, which means everything except your potatoes, rice, corn. Those are thought of more as a carbohydrate, pure sugar rather than vegetable. When we say vegetable, we mean low carbohydrate, high fiber. And that fiber is important for colon health. It's not a fun topic, but colon cancer is a big killer and it's on the rise. It used to be something that I only saw with folks over 60, 70, not anymore. There's plenty of colon cancer victims at under 40, and a lot of that's attributed to no fiber in their diet. so that the colon never gets scrubbed. And that's your junk repository, right? That's the trash bin. You want to clean that thing out. So that fiber needs to keep things moving. If it sits there long enough in the colon, you're much more likely for it to become cancerous. So fiber is important. So lunch and dinner could look like a chicken breast or a lean piece of steak. Really anything goes. Fish is great if you can get clean fish. That's another topic. And vegetables, unlimited of any type you like there. So your asparagus, your squash. If it's green, it's probably good. And in terms of carbohydrate, this is where your goals and your expenditure come in. So if I have a guy who's working in construction, he's 6 foot, 200 pounds, he's going to need some additional carbohydrate there, usually in the form of rice. Rice is a really good carbohydrate. Brown is good for the fiber, but white rice isn't as bad as they make it out. So you want to have a decent amount of rice if needed, otherwise you can just load up on the veggies. And very similar thing again at night. The crock pot is your friend. You can throw a rump roast in there or what have you, along with your veggies. Small amount of the potatoes. Darker potatoes are better. So anything like a yam or sweet potato or a red is better than your typical white potato because those are very, very high in sugar and quickly released into the bloodstream. So you get the pattern there, rather than detail exactly what to eat. You can just think of it in terms of meat and veggies, meat and veggies. That's what the human body is best designed for. The quantities are going to be dependent upon your background and how you tolerate certain foods.
One of the things I read is that with white rice, if you refrigerate it for 12 to 24 hours, reduces the glycemic.
Yeah, you're right. It's pretty cool. He's right. So if you keep it in the fridge for a day, it spikes your blood sugar less than if you have it fresh. Kind of weird. For most folks, that's not going to be a big factor, but if you have the choice, that's a good way to go. Another thing that's of equivalent importance would be the sequence that you eat your foods. So if you dive into the rice first or the potato or whatever, you're going to have a faster rise in blood sugar, which is not good, than if you started with your meat. So eat the meat first and then go on to your carbohydrates. It makes a difference. So then you have an averaging of glycemic indexes that occurs in the gut, and it slows the rate of sugar into the bloodstream. So it does make a difference over time. And we're talking about little changes that seem insignificant, but when you compound them with each meal, each day, week, month, year, adds up. The lower you can keep your blood sugar, the better. We know that. Obviously, you don't want to be so low that you're faint and dizzy, but you want to have your blood sugars low. High blood sugar is correlated with early death. That's pretty straightforward. So if your doctor is harping on you about your A1C, have you heard that term? A1C is a great tool, best thing to come out in a while. So it allows us to have an average of your blood sugars over the last several months. Really useful. Prior to that, all we had was a glucose test, which just shows you your blood sugar at that moment, which can vary tremendously according to your last meal. But the A1C tells us how have you been eating for the last few months. Really useful, and you want that number low. I like to see it under 5. The actual index is anything under 6, so 1 point makes a big difference, but the lower the better. And these sort of changes, emphasizing meats, veggies, and your fiber intake, make a big difference in a short period of time. I've seen guys, I had one this week, one of my patients, his A1C was 11.9, almost 12, it's terrible. And I think that worked out to something like an average blood sugar of 350, it's terrible. So I saw him again this last week, and he got on board with dietary changes because it was either that before he was looking at insulin. Ugh. And he was wise and decided to make these changes first. Cut that A1C in half, came down to 6.1 in a month. So that's incredible. I mean, he literally put years on his life from just 1 month of changes. He's not doing anything radical. He's not starving. He's a normal sized guy. He's eating 3 times a day, but his food is now revolving around the proteins and fats and less sugar, not eliminating. So it can be done. Absolutely. Yeah. Have I talked about sugar too much? You guys think I hate sugar? I love sugar. Tastes great.
Sugar. Is there a blood test that can assess your enzymatic situation?
Mm-mm. No. There's a few things in the body that can't be measured very easily. That's one of them. Neurotransmitters are another in the brain, is another topic. But no, there's not a good way to assess that. It's unfortunate. You should do that. Figure that out.
Well, I'm in the skinny pre-diabetic.
Ah, so it's important.
Yeah, so, and I will often take a nap in the day and
Yeah?
then I get nothing else done.
Ah,
Just
blood
eat too
sugar
much and-
plummets? Is that what happens?
No, it's probably too high.
Ah.
So but it's in my family. My sister, younger sister, is on insulin, has a type 1 diabetic daughter, and recently had colon cancer. And so she just had surgery for that. And I'm sure diet affected that a lot.
I bet it did.
She keeps me in fiber, so.
Yeah, good. Yeah, there's a weird movement out there now that's anti-fiber. I've seen some heated blogs on the topic. That's crazy. You need some fiber to keep things moving. The recommendation is 30 to 40 grams a day. Most people only get about 10. And the fiber they get is poor. There's different types, the best coming from fruits and vegetables. So if it's any kind of processed food, the fiber is negligible and low quality. And to more directly address your question, there is a good supplement for blood sugar management. Carnitine, you heard the term? It's a naturally occurring amino acid that's used to transport fats in the bloodstream. If you don't have enough carnitine, your body can't optimally burn body fat. So that's important. Hey, there you go.
This is about.
This guy's on top of it.
Yeah, okay.
You probably think I set this up.
No,
He's a
no, I
plant.
just picked it up for it.
No,
Yeah,
he's talking about everybody.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's maybe the most versatile supplement you can take next to multivitamin, which is next to it. Multivitamin, of course, has a million different applications, but this quadricarn, or 4 types of carnitine is what it's referring to, that is very versatile stuff. It has a lot of functions in the body, from blood sugar regulation to fat burning to hormone production. This is one of my go-tos, or must-haves, if you will, for men's vitality. So I recommend that quadricarn to anybody over 40, that's for darn sure. It makes a difference in testosterone production, makes a difference in blood sugar management, insulin resistance. It's fantastic for heart health. It has a lot of benefits. It's good stuff. While I'm on that topic, let's see. In terms of proteins, collagen. Have you heard about collagen? It's been in the media a little bit lately. What is collagen? Collagen is a very common protein throughout the human body. It's everywhere, and it's used everywhere as a structure, as a foundation. Collagen, not muscle tissue, but it's all of your attachments, if you will. Everything's covered in collagen. Your skin has the highest collagen percentage. So it becomes increasingly important as we age, because our own production of collagen drops pretty sharply, which is responsible for a lot of the aging signs we see with our skin. So the wrinkling, a lot of the spotting, the fragility or thin skin, that's poor collagen. But it's pretty darn easy to correct with a collagen supplement. If you're going to get it naturally, it would take a lot of chicken bones. That's your best source. So if you wanted to boil down a bunch of chicken bones, I guess you could do that. But the collagen mixes really easily in water, it's tasteless, and it goes a long way towards skin health, but also joint integrity is big. I've been very impressed with it in conjunction with glucosamine. You might have heard of that, it's been out a long time. Glucosamine is another building block for the joints. So when you take those two things together, you put your body in an optimal position for joint and skin health. This is called joint care, how about that? Good stuff, so I would recommend it. I do not recommend that a person take 100 different pills a day. I like to look at supplements as just that, supplements to a good diet, and I use them to address deficiencies primarily in a similar fashion as I would medications. So if your body has a deficiency in, say, collagen production, I'm going to recommend collagen, but not everything all at once across the board to everybody. If a person really enjoys taking pills and has a lot of money, that's fine, but for most of us, I like to keep it as practical as possible. So what I've brought are the things that apply to most people. The joint care, the collagen, the vitamin mineral is super packed. This thing's fantastic. This is the highest potency multivitamin on the market, and you will be able to use your urine as a flashlight.
Is that the Fit Tab?
Fit Tab is a lesser intensity, excellent vitamin. This is actually what I recommend to most folks. This is more applicable to athletes and people that have specific deficiencies that need high-level correction. This stuff, if you look at the potencies listed, is just off the charts strong. So a lot of folks don't require that. The Fit Tab is a great way to go. It's fewer pills daily. Where was I going with that? I guess one here. The 7 keto, let me talk about that before I forget it. Have you heard of DHEA? Yeah, DHEA is a naturally occurring hormone. It is over the counter, which is surprising. It's powerful, and it reduces in quantity in our bodies as we age as well. Powerful stuff. It's the primary means that the female body produces testosterone. So rather than administer testosterone to a female patient, I greatly prefer to start with DHEA because there's far fewer side effects, much safer, and it works. So I like DHEA. This is a particular form called 7 keto DHEA, and the difference there, 7 keto is a variant of regular DHEA, and it's responsible uniquely for metabolic rate. So you produce a lot of that when you're young and your metabolism's revved up, and after age 30 it really begins to decline, and this stuff works. It really does assist in metabolic rate. I've used it for 20 odd years myself, love it, and I've used it with many folks that are interested in fat loss. I would never recommend it to a teenager who needs 10,000 calories a day, because it's going to make things worse. But if you're over 40 and interested in fat loss, 7 keto is a great way to go. It's also friendlier than regular DHEA. Regular DHEA is potent, which is why I'm surprised it's over the counter, and it can have side effects. Like in excess quantities with a woman, if you take too much DHEA, it can cause masculine traits, like hair growth where you don't want it. And women are never happy about these things. They want answers. So I avoid that by using the 7 keto variant because it is not androgenic. Androgenic refers to male sexual characteristics, and it's 50% of what testosterone does is androgenic. That's what makes men men in terms of our hair patterns and genitals and libido, everything. Generally not desirable for women, so the 7 keto is an excellent alternative because it does not convert to those androgens. So, good way to go. Questions? Am I boring you on that topic? Sorry if that's too detailed.
What about that personal quadra?
That's what you talked about.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
carnitines.
is that for women too?
Yeah, it is. It works particularly well in concert with the the 7 keto, because the 7 keto increases metabolic rate, and this utilizes the fats that are mobilized, right? So you can burn them more efficiently. Basically, it's about double the rate of fat loss, roughly. So if you have a guy or gal that is struggling to lose a pound a week and having to really, monitor those calories tightly, this could be a godsend because it makes things easier. That 1 pound might become 2 without additional restriction, which is nice. Nobody likes to be hungry. I don't. Great questions.
Can you talk a little bit about how you said earlier, essential fats?
Oh, yeah.
affect
Yeah, I haven't touched that. Sorry.
and how people feel if the hormones are not.
Yeah, fats are critical. They've been given a bad rap. You think fat. Don't eat too much fat, you'll get fat. It's actually hard to do. You have to eat a lot. You have to overeat a lot of fats in order to gain body fat. It's much more efficient metabolically to store excess sugar than it is fat. I know that sounds weird, but your body cannot take fat that you eat and simply push it into fat cells. There's a complex process going on there, but sugar, on the other hand, in concert with insulin, can be readily stored. So fats are rarely the culprit. It's usually sugar intake. And those fats from quality sources, those essential fats, are integral to hormone production, especially as we age. So you actually need more of those essential fats as you get older. And of all the nutrients between proteins, carbs, and fats are the easiest to get because it doesn't require a ton, and you can get them from one source, which is a fish oil. Fish oil contains all of your essential fatty acids, and 1 tablespoon a day, you're covered. I mean, it's that simple. Fish oil has come a long way. It was used as punishment when we were kids, right? Like, don't do that, man. You break out the cod liver oil and so it has come so far in terms of taste and digestibility, meaning fewer fish burps, because that doesn't help your social standing.
I was gonna ask about fish oil,
Uh-huh.
but you beat me to it, so do
Yeah.
you have one you recommend?
Yeah, it's from the company Thorne, Thorne. I'm sorry I didn't bring any. You want a liquid fish oil because the capsules, you probably see them in like yellow gel caps or common. They have on average about a gram of fat in there. You need about 10 grams a day, so you have to take 10 of those, or you can take 1 big tablespoon. The liquid form is almost always fresher as well, so it's you get more bang for your buck. Thorne is the best source that I found for it because they specialize in it, and they do a good job of flash freezing for shipping, so they keep it cold. That being said, if it's extreme heat in the summer, I hold off from purchasing it if it needs to be shipped. So I try to stock up in the fall, winter months. How much difference does that really make? Enough, I think. I mean, you're paying for it. You certainly don't want a rancid oil. Rancid is the term for an oil that has gone bad, and that will make you sick. You will vomit. So easily avoided. Thorne is not carried in stores. It's a clinician's brand, doctors, but you can order it online, thorne.com. It's pricey. I want to say it's about $40 for a bottle, but that should last roughly 2 months. Not too bad. Yeah. Other sources of oil, macadamia nut oil. You ever heard of it? It's not as common. Good stuff. It's a second to fish oil. It's only produced in South Africa. Isn't that weird? So it's expensive. It's about $50 for a bottle. That'll last you for several months. Some advantages to it is that it's a good cooking oil. It has a very high smoke point, about 450 degrees. So if you use olive oil for your cooking, you'll see that it overheats pretty easily. And once it does that, dead. You're not getting any of the essential fats. Macadamia nut oil has a really high flash point, and it's very neutral tasting. Slight nuttiness to it maybe, if you take it by itself, but if you're including it with virtually anything else, you probably won't taste it at all. Species Nutrition, SPECIES, they're your best source for it. You can order it direct there. It comes right from South Africa, and that's a good second as an essential fat. This company also makes an essential fat in a gel cap form. It's a good one, but you have to take so many. You know, it's easier to get a liquid, I think. Sprouts sells some decent essential fats in liquid form, namely the brand Barlean, BARLEAN. It's in their cooler section, which is great. You don't want this stuff at room temp, so if you see one on the store shelf, a liquid fish oil at room temp, don't buy it. So they keep it cool. Barlean's is mainly flaxseed oil, which is a third in terms of quality. Good stuff, but if you have a choice, get fish oil every time.
Is avocado oil any good?
Avocado oil is good. Yeah, I would rank it up there with flax, I'd say. Yeah, it also has a high smoke point. So grapeseed oil, another good source. But none of your plant sources are as good as the fish. So they make a variety of different EPA, DHA, fatty acid supplements. It can get complicated, or you can keep it real simple and just do 1 tablespoon daily of fish oil. I've seen krill oils.
What are your thoughts about butter and tallow and
I like.
lard, those things?
Yeah,
Would
I
you
like.
just stick with those kinds of things, or would you need to
Yeah,
supplement?
they don't contain all of your essential fats in the same fashion as the fish oil, so you're best with both. But if you can find a good clean butter, it's, you know, not overly processed and loaded with hormones, yeah, butter's good stuff. Saturated fat is not a complete enemy as it's portrayed. So the old thought process was that saturated fat and cholesterol will give you a heart attack to die. Now we know it's just not the truth. The saturated fats are actually integral to hormone production as well. So you need some. You want to keep it reasonable. So the amount that you use on your buttered toast daily is fine. Beef tallow, as you mentioned, is a good source. Just don't go nuts with it. You know, you don't want your food swimming in the butter. But if you have a choice, I'd rather it be swimming in butter than sugar or syrup. Hands down, every time. So maybe this is a point to discuss cholesterol. Do you guys have any questions about that?
If you eat fat, does that increase your cholesterol?
There you go. That's the big question, right? And that's what we've been taught. Things are really changing dramatically very recently in our thoughts toward that. So yeah, we were taught if you eat fat, you're going to get fat, your heart's going to get clogged, you're going to die. Cholesterol's going to go up. Simple as that, right? But don't worry, there's statins that you can take every day and it'll fix everything. Statins, by the way, are the only medication I refuse to prescribe. And I anticipate them being pulled from the market sometime soon. They're bad news, don't do it. There are better ways to lower your cholesterol if you need to. So the cholesterol standards have changed so radically. I remember when 400 was the threshold. They said if you're under 400, you're fine. Nowadays, you know, they flip out. So they lowered it to, I think the next step was 350 and then 300, 270, 220 for a long time. And now or most recently, they're proposing 160. That's not good. So cholesterol is absolutely essential to human life. We need it for the production of all cellular membranes and hormones. Gotta have it. So if you want to age as quickly as possible, eliminate cholesterol because your cells will not replicate in optimal fashion for sure. You need it. That wax waxy, greasy stuff serves a very real purpose in the human body. You have to look at the components of cholesterol. So you've probably heard of HDL, LDL, yeah. HDL is thought of as your good cholesterol, good stuff. If you have an HDL of 50 or greater, you've eliminated over 95% of cardiac risk. It's huge. So HDL is fantastic. Well, how do I get my HDL up? Choose the right parents. That's really important. And weight training has the biggest impact. Cardio training helps, but weight training for some reason has a definite impact on HDL production. So it pays to train. LDL was thought of as the demon, but now we know it's not that simple. You have to look at it further and break it down. Most LDL is good. The portion called very low density lipoprotein, VLDL, is the bad stuff. You want to keep that as low as you can, and that is primarily dietary. So if your saturated fats are sky high and your VLDL is too high, then you can probably pull back on some of those fats. But in general, no. Fats and cholesterol are not related. I came across a great article recently, 1964, from a nutrition guru or what have you, named Vince Gironda. And man, he talk about ahead of his time. It was like reading something from today. He was just throwing it all out there. He said that this stigma about fats and cholesterol has no basis. In fact, it's dead wrong. We need that cholesterol, and the people with the lowest cholesterol are dying earliest. So he was advocating high egg intake. And of course we were told eggs are bad, right? Can't eat more than an egg a week or something ridiculous. And that's just simply not true. So don't worry too much about it. What you do want to worry about though are triglycerides. So this is another component. And triglycerides are the fats that are bound to sugars in the bloodstream. And they do have an association with early death, cardiac risk. So you want to keep those down under 100. And it's completely related to dietary intake of carbohydrate. So if you reduce the sugars in your diet, your triglycerides drop. Simple as that. It happens pretty quick too.
I was just gonna see what you think about the correlation between, more and more statins, lower cholesterol, and everybody now has dementia and Alzheimer's.
Oh, good point,
Brains
yeah.
made out of cholesterol.
Yeah, she said it. So Alzheimer's and dementia rates have really skyrocketed. It's terrible. People want to know why, what's going on. You can have somebody who's in apparently good physical health and they have severe dementia. They have no quality of life. What is up? Well, the human brain is primarily cholesterol. It's mainly fat. It's a very unique organ. And so your fat intake, your cholesterol intake, are absolutely key to brain health. And that's what you're dealing with Alzheimer's and from what we know of dementia, which is a rather broad term. If you look at it scientifically, it's called a neurofibrillary tangle. Neurofibrillary tangle. So you have billions of these nerves in your brain, central nervous system, that all have specific functions and they're all interwoven. And from what we know, that fat content, which largely comes from cholesterol, is what allows them to move freely and independently. And when they don't, they stick and they can't fire. And so you have entire regions of the brain that they're shut off. So you need that fat intake. And if you look at the increased incidence of dementia, and especially Alzheimer's, it correlates with the increase in statin usage. That's criminal. So statins have been Big Pharma's baby for a while. They love them. And there is financial incentive toward doctors, I can tell you. They want you to prescribe them. And what does a statin do? It stops your natural production of cholesterol. And yeah, the cholesterol comes down, and they say, yay, you're not gonna have a heart attack now. Well, first off, that's simply not true. And second, no one was talking about brain health as it relates to that. So it's sad. And it's a pretty darn strong correlation. You know, those scripts have gone up and Alzheimer's has gone up. So you tell me, so I do not recommend the statins at all. If a person has dangerously high cholesterol that must be lowered as quickly as possible, red yeast rice is more effective than a statin and a heck of a lot safer. Red yeast rice. It is so powerful, in fact, that you shouldn't use it willy-nilly. You need to have some guidance, and that's where I could come in, because it is strong stuff. But it is over the counter, works really well. Red yeast rice in conjunction with niacin, vitamin B3, works extremely well with cholesterol levels at what we call modulation, not suppression. That means it doesn't just kill cholesterol production like a statin does, but rather it brings it down to a more desirable level, because we don't want to squash it. And red yeast rice in conjunction with niacin boosts HDL, which is good. So the doctor that popularized or studied niacin for those purposes, and interestingly enough for mental health purposes, was a Dr. Abram Hoffer, who was incredibly ostracized and penalized in his time for it. Big Pharma did not like him because he was showing that those combinations and niacin as a sole or monotherapy were much more effective at cholesterol management and for mental health issues, especially bipolar and schizophrenia. He treated thousands of patients successfully without any of the commonly used pharmaceuticals. So why is that? You say, well, there's a connection in the brain. So niacin acts in that fashion to allow the body to make use of those fats more efficiently. And without it, higher mental functions begin to decline, and eventually pellagra, which is a terrible disease resulting from niacin deficiency, will kill you. So you need niacin. You need it in a lot higher quantities than FDA labeling. So that the FDA, whenever you pick up a supplement for a vitamin, mineral like this, you look at this, and let's look at niacin. Where did you go? Here. Okay, so this has roughly 1,000% of the recommended daily value. And you think, what? Why do I need 1,000%? That sounds excessive, right? That's because the daily value established by the FDA is enough to prevent disease state. So the amount that they're recommending is enough to keep you out of pellagra, keep you alive. Big difference between not gonna die and optimal. Big difference. It ranges greatly. So this 1,000% more accurately reflects what your body actually requires under stress, such as exercise, daily living, blah, blah, blah. So it looks excessive when you pick some of these things up, especially the B vitamins, because they're like, oh, here's a B12, you know B12, right? People associated with energy, which is true. It's also necessary for fat loss. It works in conjunction with carnitine for fat mobilization in the bloodstream. And this has over 6,000% of the RDA, and that just sounds crazy until you realize that the B12 minimum daily value that they're recommending here is enough to prevent what they call a Wernicke's disease, which is a failure for the frontal lobe to process linguistics. You can't understand or speak. That's a problem. So they're saying, oh, you only need that much. When obviously you need a lot more to be functioning at your best. So that's why you see the big discrepancy. It's not because they're just trying to, make expensive urine. There's reasons for that. And on that topic, you probably heard, oh, vitamins are a waste because you just pee them out, right? Well, vitamins are largely water soluble. they're not designed to be stored. And the body does not want to store them. They're used as catalysts in a myriad of reactions throughout the human body, and so the body uses them and expels them. That's what it does. So it makes use of that high amount of B12 to free up those fats in this instance, and then when it's done, to the kidneys it goes and it's safely excreted. And you'll see that in the discoloration of your urine. Doesn't mean that you wasted it. Yeah, you want to pee it out. If you didn't, you would die pretty quickly from the excess of B12. There's not been a single recorded death from over-ingestion of vitamins, by the way. Can't say that about any drug. So the safety record is quite good. And they're cheaper to manufacture, cheaper for the patient. So that's why you have ridiculous recommendations by Big Pharma, which in turn influences the government through lobbyists to say, you don't need that. That's crazy. You know, a normal diet covers everything. Really? You look at how the average person eats and you want to tell me that that's optimal? No. Yeah.
I had a question when you said, going back to things firing in the brain properly and so forth. You know how blood pressure rates have gone up and down throughout the years, and now it's like 120 over 160, so the cutoff right there, or you're getting in the hypertensive area. So like sodium intake and electrolytes and so forth, it's like, well, cut off sodium, just cut it out. Now they've kind of changed their mind and said, well, limit your sodium intake.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? I mean, we need it, right?
Yeah. So it's a big misconception. Doctors throughout history, until the advent of the new antihypertensive medications that are everywhere, prior to that, we were always taught that blood pressure should naturally rise with age. It makes sense because you have increased arterial stiffness, which means the blood vessels do not flex as much as they did in the past. So you will have naturally an increase in the pressure through that vessel, normal. But when the new drugs came out to control blood pressure, suddenly all that went away. And they said, everybody must be 120 over 80. If you think about it, that's absurd. So you take a 70-year-old woman and she should have the same blood pressure as a 10-year-old kid, a boy runner. What? How does that make sense? Obviously, you need differing amounts of pressure throughout the system. And, I mean, you could discuss it from a plumbing perspective and make more sense. So blood pressure regulations have changed a lot. And to put everybody in this box and say you must be 120 over 80 is bad medicine. I can't tell you how many patients I've seen who complain of faintness, dizziness, especially upon arising or standing, like getting out of bed in the morning. They say, oh, I have to hold on to something, I feel faint. Your blood pressure's too low. They've artificially forced it so low that you cannot get adequate pressure through those vessels. And so consequently, the brain does not get adequate blood and oxygen, and you will be faint. So what's normal? Well, we used to say that somewhere between 5 and 10 points per decade increase. So we didn't bat an eye at somebody 65 years of age or greater whose blood pressure was 160 over 100, for instance. It's fine. And I still don't. I will not treat that. But your standard doc would say, oh my gosh, you're in a hypertensive crisis. We got to get that down quick. And if you feel faint, it's okay, you'll adjust, they say. No, you just learn to not do those things. You don't stand up as quick as you used to. You don't tie your shoes. That's terrible. So, yeah, blood pressure, there are ways of controlling it and keeping it within a healthy range without just completely crushing it. Celery, that was weird. I hate celery, but celery, the juice or the concentrate, works incredibly well for blood pressure. Unless you're a rabbit, you'll probably want to get it in a supplement form because it takes like 10 stalks a day. But the point is, it works, and there's no side effect except that it's celery. So the sodium bugaboo has come about because sodium by itself does not exist in nature. It is always accompanied by, on average, 79 other minerals. They're bound to it. Sodium, there's no pure sodium deposit on Earth. These minerals are always in concert. There's 79 other primary, sometimes as many as 82. And the reason that's important is because the human body is not designed to process pure sodium. We don't do a good job of it. So the kidneys, the body tells the kidneys, excrete this stuff. We don't know what to do with it, and in the process of doing that, it will increase your blood pressure in order to excrete it as quickly as possible. If you use a natural salt source, like your Celtic salts or dark salts, even the pink ones, that have those other minerals, not only is it not harmful, but it's been proven to lower blood pressure. So you need sodium in your diet, but it must be combined with all the other naturally occurring minerals. If it's white, like your typical table salt, it's junk. Don't do that.
What about sea salt?
Sea salt, the darker the better. So if it's grayish, that's awesome. I've seen some that are actually black. That's the best. Sea salt is a lot better. But the FDA doesn't regulate that very well. So you can claim sea salt if it only has one other constituent, and it's usually artificially added. So it's just a way of getting around things. But refined table salt is bad, yeah. But you can, in fact, I encourage liberal usage of dark salts. Most of us, especially in the summertime, or if you live in the valley, we're deficient in sodium. You need it. Most people need a couple of grams a day, 2,000 milligrams, but it must be accompanied by the other minerals, not by itself.
They mine a really good one in Utah. It's
Mhm.
Redmond salt.
Mhm.
It's good stuff.
Redmond? Yeah, I like real salt.
That's theirs.
Yeah, that's Redmond? Yeah, she's right, that's good stuff. You can get it in fries or whatever. It's not expensive. And if you look at it, it looks dirty. What is this? It's got all these little black specks in it. That's good. So, yeah, you can use that freely, but the sodium that they put in fast food especially, in huge quantities, the average person gets 4 grams of table salt daily. That's crazy. That's a huge amount, and by itself is definitely going to increase blood pressure. So,
Isn't that harming the arteries?
it is indirectly, how do I best answer that? I'd say the constriction upon the blood vessels from chronic hypertension, yes, over time, yes. Not in an acute fashion. So having, salt isn't going to immediately hurt your blood vessels, but you keep it up. Yeah, you're right. And just to reiterate, triglycerides are really the most important part of any lipid panel. When your doctor says, I want to run a lipid panel, and it's usually to look at cholesterol, you can most of the time ignore most of that, but emphasize the triglycerides. That's what matters. Triglycerides are directly correlated with coronary artery disease and early death. So you want to keep those triglycerides down. What you thinking?
You've got about 15 minutes.
Oh my, I better shut up and listen. You guys have questions?
What do you think of Robert Kennedy's assertion that beef tallow is better than seed oils?
Yeah, hot topic right now. Seed oils are under a lot of scrutiny. In short, yes, I agree. I would prefer the beef tallow, yeah. That being said, not all seed oils are the same. So you have some sources that are really bad, but a higher quality one, I don't think should be avoided at all costs. I don't think that it's going to have a detriment on your health, but I would prefer a beef tallow overall due to the saturated fat content. I know that sounds crazy because we used to, saturated fat was bad, but now we don't need some. But like anything, it comes down to quantities, right? So if you keep a Crisco can full of beef tallow and go through it every week, it's probably not good. But if you use it sparingly, like with your eggs in the morning or whatnot, yeah, I would prefer that to canola oil, that kind of stuff. There's a reason the industry has favored seed oils. They're cheap, and they store for long periods of time. So they're always going to advocate those. Crisco's terrible, by the way.
Is lard the same thing as,
Hmm?
is lard the same as beef tallow?
Largely, yeah. Yeah. Tallow tends to contain more of the marrow content, so it's better. But that varies a lot too. Labels. You know, the government has one chief purpose, I thought, was to keep us safe. They don't do a very good job with food supply. They bow to the will of big ag and big farm, so you cannot assume that things are done in your best interest. That's unfortunate. You shouldn't have to be a chemist to read a food label. So if you have the choice, keep it that simple. You know, if you don't recognize something on the label versus another brand, go with the other one. I know that's overly simplified, but most of that stuff, especially if it's preceded with sodium, whatever, like sodium phosphate, not good. Those are preservatives of some sort. It's not even the sodium content that you're worried about. It's the actual preservative that we don't know about. We don't, amazingly enough, we don't have studies on this stuff. Food is not treated with the same seriousness as medication. So if you're going to put a drug on the market, you have to have clinical trials over time to see what its long-term effects may be. But the food supplies, you know, toss in what you want, see what happens.
So people die.
Yeah. King Horn is a good title if you want to watch a documentary that discusses a lot of this. Good stuff that shows how our food supply has really gone down since the subsidization of corn. I think that was in the 80s, wasn't it? Remember? Bushel of wheat for a barrel of oil and all that? That was Reagan, right? Yeah. Anyway, somewhere around that time period is when the government began paying farmers to make more corn than we could use. And so they found uses for it in everything, from car batteries, you name it, there's corn in it. It's crazy. This has corn in it, this plastic, because they've got so much of this stuff. If you spend any time in the Midwest, like around the big grain elevators and whatnot, you'll see mounds of this stuff, like 10 stories high, corn, just out there rotting because they literally can't use it. There's so much. And so that's why it's present everywhere. And high fructose corn syrup is a direct result of that. They needed a use for the corn, and what better use than as a sweetener that's cheap. We have, you know, the more of it that we can use, and it's, I can't remember the numbers, like 10 times as sweet as table sugar. So that's why corn syrup's everywhere. You know, it's in your ketchup. If you pick up a hamburger, almost every part of it has corn syrup in it. The bun has a lot. I mean, even the meat now has corn syrups in it, believe it or not. And high fructose corn syrup is the devil. So if you hear something negative about that, it's true. It is not utilized in the human body in the same way as other sugars. The liver does not know how to process high fructose corn syrup. It's a completely artificial thing. It does not exist in nature. Fructose in particular has a specific enzymatic process in the liver for not only storage, but for satiation. So what I'm saying is the trigger, the mechanism, the enzyme that's necessary for the body to say, hold up, we're full, we have enough, that doesn't happen with high fructose corn syrup. You can endlessly consume it, and people do. Sodas are probably the biggest culprit, so that's why they're addictive, and you can't get enough. So you see people with these half-gallon jugs of Mountain Dew or whatever all day long. You start doing the math, you're like, geez, why don't you feel like you're out to here? I'd be bloated. But they don't get that because the body doesn't produce that satiety hormone like like it does for all other sugars. So from a sales perspective, man, that's magic. You've got something that's addictive and you never get tired of it.
I get a lot of questions lately, a little bit off track here, but as we age as men, our testosterone levels dropping, TRT
Yeah.
questions, and possible repercussions from that a lot of people are afraid of. But what's your take on
Oh yeah, I didn't
TRT.
touch on that, sorry. Hormones. Hormones are essential to longevity. They decline with age because once nature has determined that we're no longer of reproductive age, we don't need those hormones, and that replication at the cellular level suffers as a result because proper amounts of those hormones are needed for proper replication. So as testosterone, especially estrogen actually, decline, that's in direct correlation with what we call aging, right? So we can now supplement, if you will, those hormones to bring a person back into an optimal range. Hormone replacement therapy, HRT. The primary hormone with women is estrogen and it's testosterone. So the question is, that he's posing is this good? Is this healthy? Are we actually improving lifespan or reducing it? And as with most things, especially medications, it comes down to dosage. So if you abuse the hormone, you're going to have negative effects, especially upon the cardiovascular system. So we know that excess testosterone promotes atherosclerosis or hardening of the arteries, has a number of ill effects upon the heart. Proper administration of those hormones has the opposite effect. So we know that when your testosterone is optimal, like between ages 18 and 25, the incidence of heart disease is very low. It has what's known as a cardioprotective effect. This is good. The question is, what is that line in the sand, right? So do you really want your hormones as high as they were when they were 18? Because the rest of your body isn't. It's not set up at that same degree. So we have to take it into consideration. It's very specific to the patient. This is where the physician's interpretation comes in. The range for testosterone is the second widest range assigned in all of medicine. It's absurd. So they say anything from total testosterone of 200 all the way up to 1200 is acceptable range. So what you've got there is the difference between a 90-year-old guy and an 18-year-old guy, and you're telling me that anywhere in there is fine? No, I like to be a little bit more specific with it and look at what we're trying to accomplish. Are we trying, do we want to maximize life expectancy and reduce risk of disease? Okay, that's not going to require a ton of testosterone. If the guy's at 200, well, maybe if we get him up to 400, that's sufficient. And we can tell this from blood markers. We can run labs regularly and see those improvements. But if I raise him up to 1200, what are we doing? Am I seeing the same benefit? No, the benefits fall off with increasing numbers. So there's no justification for it except that the guy feels really good. You know, he said, ooh, I feel like I'm 21. I don't know if your wife liked that or not. But the rest of the body isn't suited for that. It's way past 21. But on the other hand, if I have a guy who's only in his 40s and his testosterone is really low, he's very active, no predisposition for disease, then maybe we could justify that higher number. Maybe he needs 700, 800. The real problem is that we don't know where that optimum number was for each person, unless the very rare circumstance of a guy having those numbers done earlier in life. And unfortunately, I've never been privy to that as a doctor. That'd be wonderful. If a guy came in and said, hey, 40 years ago when I felt my best, my testosterone was X, wow, that's great, but that doesn't happen. So what we have to do is kind of shoot in the dark. Honestly, doctors don't like to say that, but it's true. You have to listen to the patient. You have to weigh the pros and cons, like with any drug. There's always risk-benefit. Testosterone is a controlled substance. So it's in the same category as like LSD and marijuana and things of this nature. Serious is the point. It's not an over-the-counter, safe for everyone thing. And unfortunately, some guys think of it like that. Hey, my body makes it naturally, it can't be bad. It's a hormone, so it's powerful, it's long-acting. So if you're having issues with it, if you're seeing negative effects upon your lipids, for instance, those things are going to be around for a while. It's going to take some time to reverse that if possible. They're powerful, for lack of a better description. So you have to treat it with respect.
Is there a difference between supposedly bioidentical
Uh-huh.
testosterone and just something like a gel?
You know what? That's mainly marketing. So again, a lot of doctors won't mention this, but testosterone is testosterone. Whether it's created in a lab or not, it's the same molecule. You cannot tell them apart, which is why the term bioidentical is used. Yes, that's true. However, any form of testosterone must be attached to what's called an ester in order to be absorbed in the human body. It cannot be just free-floating. It has to be attached to this specific ester, usually cypionate. You may have heard that term. That's the most commonly used ester. Enanthate is equally common. There's a number of them, but the point is, none of them are natural. That's not how it works in the body. So it's a yay-nay thing, right? So testosterone's natural. That's bioidentical. But you have to attach it to a carrier molecule, and that's not natural. But really the point to me as a doctor is we're raising levels artificially. That's not natural. Whatever you want to call it. But obviously your body's not doing that on its own. I think, although it's not my specialty, female HRT is more promising in terms of longevity and quality of life than male or TRT. And I love testosterone replacement. I think it can absolutely change lives. It's wonderful for those that are truly deficient. It can be a game changer.
What are
But
symptoms of a deficiency in that?
yeah, so we're here talking about vitality, right? And that rather ambiguous term is what's assigned to testosterone. Male vitality. Well, how do you describe male vitality? What does that mean? Drive, desire, motivation, ambition, your oomph to get going. Your libido is a factor. But none of these are quantifiable, right? You can't assign an index to it. So it's difficult to really say, how much do we need, where are you at now, where should you be? There's no range for that. So the numbers that are assigned to total testosterone are very arbitrary. And I use them to determine the efficacy of treatment, but just as importantly, if not more so, I listen to the patient to see if he's benefiting from the therapy. Some folks simply say energy. I don't like that so much as drive. So when you're 18, 25, whatever, you don't think twice about getting off the couch and doing something, right? Like your buddies call and, hey, let's go out and do this or that. Yeah, I'm down. But you turn 55, 65, whatever, and now it's a question. Do I really want to get up? So testosterone can influence that for sure. That's important. But it's not quantifiable.
Is it an accelerant for prostate cancer?
Ah, good question. Short answer, no. Caveat. If you have any existing cancers or hereditary predisposition, yes. So that's a major factor in screening. If a guy's had any evidence, even if it's not conclusive from biopsy, I don't touch it. No way. Because the DHT component of testosterone is directly responsible for prostate growth. So not worth the risk. Or if you say, hey, every male member of my my family for 6 generations has died of prostate cancer, but I don't have it. Not yet. Let's not speed the process. So, in general, with a healthy prostate, the answer is no, because it actually acts as an anti-inflammatory, so it's a good thing. Yeah. The difference is in the metabolism present within a cancer cell. Cancer cells are obviously different than regular cells, primarily in that they endlessly replicate. So we started this by talking about cellular replication and aging, right? Well, if we were to ever master the replication that occurs within a cancer cell, we could live forever. There's problems with that. Cancer tends to kill you because those cells do not function in the way they're originally designed. So they may look vaguely like the original cell, but they morph and they grow and they keep growing. Do you know that there's cancer cells and tissue that is kept in test tubes from one woman 100 years ago, and it's still going. Yep. So if you have that going on at all in that region, testosterone is going to speed it up. No way. But if you don't, then there's no reason to believe it that would occur. But it's just not worth the risk of the prostate, especially. But it's not a. In the past, urologists tended to be rather black and white with it. Just say no, it's bad for the prostate. But the thing is, they were looking at correlation, not causation. So the statistic assigned with prostate cancer is that 75% of men 75 years of age or older have prostate cancer, whether it's detected or not. I mean, the odds are you're going to have it as a guy if you live long enough. I mean, overwhelmingly. So, if you have a guy that's been on testosterone for 10 years, and now at 75 he's diagnosed with prostate cancer, can you really say it was a testosterone? You know? Or was he going to develop that naturally anyway? Well, that's up to the doc to decide. And if there's any guesswork, any doubt involved, it's safer not to.
What are your feelings about PSA levels?
Yeah, PSA's it's a great thing for the doc and the patient because we don't have to rely on digital rectal exams anymore, which is beautiful. Oh, you know how they train you to do that in med school? You want to know? Maybe you don't. I don't know. They have this magic box, and inside the box, they're big boxes, and inside them are different models of prostates. You can't see them. There's just a hole. And your finger goes, and you have to be able to accurately differentiate and say which one is cancerous or not. Yeah. It's not a skill I wish to obtain. So the PSA eliminates that. It really does, because it tells us in a heartbeat if there's anything going on. 1 to 4 is the range, right? And it naturally elevates with age. So it's not a bad thing for a guy 70 plus years of age to have a PSA of 4. It's all relevant to his former, or his trends, his former levels. If he's been at 4 for 10 years, nothing's changed, there's no cause for alarm. If he's been at 0.9 his whole life, now he's suddenly at 4, we need to see what's up. Typically, it's localized inflammation, and we can rule that in or out by the percentage of free-floating PSA. So if that's high, it's a good thing, and it usually means that there's been some activity, whether it's sexual or exercise, anything that's involving the prostate within the last 48 hours, that'll greatly elevate it. So the first thing you do with an acute rise in PSA is retest and see where you're at. Have the patient rest for a couple of days, no activity, and then retest and see if it's still elevated. If the percentage free PSA is still high, and by high I mean over 20, the odds are very, very highly against cancer. Yeah. So that's the first step. If it remains elevated, if the free PSA is under that 20 mark, biopsy is called for. Yep. And those have improved a lot too. They can now do what's called an 18 punch biopsy in a lot of urology clinics. You don't even have to go out for it. And it's pretty darn impressive. It's a fine needle biopsy of 18 spots on the prostate. And the reason you want so many is because prostate cancer is devious. It hides in crevices and folds. So if you do just a single punch biopsy, it could very likely come back clean. But that may not be true. So the 18 point is a huge advance. Yeah. Now, if it is cancerous, I really encourage the patient to explore all potential solutions that spare the prostate. You do not want a prostatectomy unless it's metastasized and is complete. If the prostate is completely cancerous and you think it's going to involve neighboring lymph or has already invaded lung or spine, it's got to go. But if that's not the case, if it's localized, maybe to one quadrant of the prostate, no lymph involvement, man, remove that and leave the rest. You do not want to go without it. Has a huge impact on sexual function. So, and that's rarely discussed to the degree necessary, if at all. I've had so many guys come to me and say, my doc didn't tell me about this. What's going on? And it's not reversible. I mean, you're kind of stuck. That's terrible. So there are some really good alternatives out there right now. The TURP procedure in particular is very successful. They now use spot chemo and even spot radiation with great success. It's very prostate sparing. So yeah.
I've had a couple cryosurgery.
Oh, yeah.
UCLA Medical School and also now Knife at Mayo Clinic.
I'm sorry for talking down to you. You
No,
know all this.
No.
I'm glad you did.
No, not at all. And
Yeah.
now, the last reading was .23.
Beautiful.
I was over 12
Wow.
and
I call that a success.
yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I'm happy to hear it. Yeah, prostate is a major factor with testosterone replacement. Maybe the most important. Obviously, heart health is critical, but prostate's right up there. So I always weigh that in very heavily.
I was gonna ask you then, if you're in that situation, then I get a lot of questions as well from some of my clients about ED and
Oh, yeah.
what to do now at this point, now that
Uh-huh.
that process is already done.
Yeah.
And so forth.
So post-prostatectomy, there is a solution, which is fantastic. And a lot of doctors are not aware of it, which is unfortunate. So what typically happens is a guy has a prostatectomy or removal, and he cannot perform sexually, and the doctor gives him a script for Viagra. And he almost immediately discovers that does nothing. And now he feels embarrassed, he feels hopeless, it's terrible. If he dares go back to the doc will just say, oh, hey buddy, you're already 75, you know, at least you're alive, you know, you should be grateful, not complaining. And that's just not good medicine. There is a solution. The trimix therapy has been established for 40 years now, and I have helped many men to have restoration of their function, which is a beautiful thing. It's a marriage saver, and it's an essential part of men's health. Let's face it. So if a guy is in that position, if you know a man like that, please tell him it is not hopeless and that the odds are greatly in his favor that I can help him. Yeah, there are options. Unfortunately, they're rarely discussed. Viagra is not the only thing. Good question. Maybe not the funnest topic. We are here for men's health, right?
Not one, we all wanna ask, but you know, sometimes you do, you have to.
It's a big part of what I do every day. Yeah. Men's health and ED, it's important. And it's unfortunate there's a stigma, right? Because most women feel fairly comfortable talking to their gynecologist about such matters. But men, you know, we're taught that's part of your masculinity, and if it's your fault and whatever. None of that's true. So it would be just like if you had a kidney issue, or a shoulder issue, or anything, you would go to that respective physician for help. Has nothing to do with your psychology or whatever. I don't care. I'm going to help, whatever the reason. And somewhere around 99%. I know that sounds like a cliche number, but it's true. About 99% of men I can help, and that remaining 1%. Of which there's less than a handful that come to my mind, I was still able to help them restore function surgically, which is a last resort, but hey, it exists. Yep. I'll never be in a position where I tell a guy, sorry, can't help you. It's awful. So if you know anyone like that, please feel free to refer them. I will help. And you don't have to be dying of prostate cancer or 80 years old. I see plenty of guys that are under 40. ED is not specific to a certain age group or anything like that, so nobody should suffer. What do you think? What did I miss? Did I harp too much on something or not enough on?
I thought it was great.
Yeah, I thought it was great, yeah.
Okay.
Very informative.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for your attention. Your backsides are probably aching, sitting there too long. See, I get to move around.
Do I understand you're here Monday for?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna mention, the doctor is here Monday taking appointments as well.
Mhm.
So you can actually sign up right now if you'd like.
Yeah, but at 2 p.m. Everybody wants to sit down and talk. Not him,
Good old Wyatt.
he's trouble.
I'll take 2 p.m.
You like that?
Bring in all my supplements.
Okay.
We'll talk
Yeah,
about
please do. Yeah, all right, well, let's do it.
my veritable plethora.
Yeah. I'm gonna take, the last couple minutes to discuss these to be, used in some advertising. You don't have to stick around for that, that's one. Is that okay with you, John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much is the super?
Super pack's $30. So it's $1 a day.
Don't forget, we got the Vitality magazines over there. Doctor has an article in it. And if you would like to sign up, I can help you out at the little
Try it.
computer.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Can't go wrong with that, huh?
See you Tuesday.
Nice to meet you. Okay.
Well, I'll see you Tuesday. We'll work on your profile. Get you on the website.
Rice.
All right, we'll see you guys.
Nope.